This conference will now be recorded.
To our special town commission meeting for goal setting. Kelly, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Cassidy?
Here.
Vice Mayor Faust?
Here.
Mayor Pugh?
Here. All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, any additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda?
No.
No.
All right. Public comment?
We get a comment on each item as you go along?
Yeah, if you're on each item that goes through that we're goal setting, you can comment on that. But do you have something outside of that, Terry, that you want to enlighten us with?
Well, you get comment on the town manager contract?
Absolutely, because it's separate from,
I mean, I'll wait until you call for those comments unless you want to do it now.
no, you can do, if you want to do it now, you can. Or you, if you don't want to sit through the whole meeting, it's up to you.
Well,
But if you do it twice, we'll have to find you.
Yeah.
Terry Brown, Public.Stop. No, I read through the contract. Didn't commit it totally to memory, but one of the things I was hoping that we could get some legal opinion on the bonding issue. It says that the town would defend the manager if there's a mistake or lawsuit. Is that right, Christie? So you're holding her harmless. But is it an advantage to have additional bond on the town manager for mistake other than, I don't know how to phrase
Yeah,
it.
but we already have E&O insurance for the
Yeah.
commissioners and the manager though.
So
Yeah.
anything that she did that would
On the
put
job.
the town in fault, so she wouldn't be personally responsible with her bond. There wouldn't be additional bond. We would have our own insurance.
Correct.
So still, the taxpayers are still paying it. A bond diverts that responsibility from our insurance and our obligation. Am I right, Christie?
Right, by charter, the town commission can require the town manager to provide a bond. Normally what would happen is, as long as she's acting within the course and scope of her duties and doesn't engage in willful, wanton misconduct, the town indemnifies for her action, because her actions are essentially the town's action. So it would only be for something that was outside the scope of her duties and not just simple negligence,
Okay,
which would.
Thanks, sir.
Right.
clear that up, I guess.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to the regular agenda. The approval of town manager contract. Who wants to start with that? Christie?
Sure. So in the agenda, in the backup, is the full manager's agreement that Glenn Ladner has reviewed and gone through it and appears to be agreeable to it. It is, as I said in the agenda memo, really based on the previous town manager's agreement and some language that we added in the last chief of police agreement. There's an exhibit, so in the event that there is severance offered under the agreement, there's already a drafted severance agreement, which is a full release, so that there would be no further claims after. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I just have one. The separation agreement and general release. Have we done that previously? It's a great idea.
I don't know if it was in the prior manager's agreement. From our office, our experience has been it's best to draft it up now so that everybody's agreed that the form of it. That way there's less issues if that issue arises down the road.
And by everyone, you mean Lynn as well.
Correct.
It's a great idea, like it.
Anything?
No, looks good to me. I talked to Lynn about it.
Any public comment besides Terry? All right. Is there a motion on the floor?
Make a motion that we accept the town manager contract as written.
Second.
Motion and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Welcome again.
Thank you.
All righty, discussion of timeline and deadlines to fill the town commission vacancies. Lynn, so
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we all know, on the April 3rd meeting, we had 2 commissioners that resigned their seats as their positions. So with 3 commissioners remaining, it is up to you to appoint to fill those vacancies until the next election. If you are unable to do so, then we would need to hold a special election before the next election. The provision in the charter allows for the appointment by a majority vote of the remaining members of the commission. To appoint the new commissioners may be by unanimous vote or a vote of 2 to 1 pursuant to section 3.07A of the town charter. The majority of the commission shall constitute a quorum. No action of the commission shall be valid or binding unless adopted by the affirmative vote of 3 members except as otherwise set forth. So if for any reason we would have a meeting moving forward and you chose not to appoint someone else, as one of the 3 of you were not able to be there, not only would we not have a quorum to have a meeting, but we could not conduct any business. So it is important that we at least fill one of the vacancies. The next election is March of 2024, when 2 commissioner seats will be up for election. One of the recently vacated seats includes a commissioner whose term would normally expire, and a commissioner whose term expires after in the March 2026 election. Therefore, there will be 3 commission seats up for election in March of 2024, 2 seats for a term of 3 years, and 1 seat for a term of 2 years. Pursuant to section 505 of the charter, 2 candidates that receive the largest and next number of largest votes cast in the March 2024 election will be declared elected for the 2 commission seats that have expired in an ordinary manner, i.e. the 3-year terms, and the candidate receiving the 3rd largest number of votes will be declared elected for the commission seat vacated for the remaining 2-year term. Under the town commission's rules of order and procedure, Rule 10, the town will need to announce the 2 commission seat vacancies on the town commission's agenda, which is what we're here to do today, and the town's commission website. For all interested parties shall submit a letter of interest and a resume to the town clerk by a deadline stated in the announcement. The town clerk determines whether the interested person is a qualified elector of the town and submit that information to the town commission. The town commission will then make the appointments in a public town commission consistent with the process set forth in Rule 10, i.e. by ballot. No nominations from the floor are allowed in the appointment for the 2 vacant commission seats. Please note that pursuant to section 5.01 of the town charter, to be a qualified elector in town, a person must have been a resident of the town and qualified as an elector in the state of Florida and the town.
was there a time?
Those are for you guys to decide. The deadline for selecting, for collecting the resumes and letters of interest, and then for.
No, my question is, was there a time that you have to be you have to be living in Ocean Ridge? Is there a minimum time in the code?
Not pursuant to the charter or code.
I thought we already decided April 20th was the deadline.
No, that is for the Board of Adjustment and for the planning and zoning. That was decided prior to these vacancies coming open.
So we don't have a deadline right now?
No.
We're
No.
here to decide that then?
Yes. And then you will be making the appointments, whether that be at the May 1 meeting, which is very quickly, or at another special meeting shortly thereafter in May. It is important as we start the budget process in June, and so if we are going to move forward, we want to get someone on board and ready to start the budget process quickly.
Did you advertise it at all? Yeah.
No, because we haven't
So you want to start advertising right away? And
For the commission seats?
yeah. I mean, we already advertised for the other stuff. That's
Well, it
next
went,
month.
it was in the
had.
tidings newsletter,
Just
but
to inform
maybe
people what happened.
send something similar, more condensed out in
Because I have to
Civic
have-
Ready.
I have to have a date to give them, a due date, like we did with the boards. So I have to actually officially announce it with a due date.
So June 1st, what do you say?
Well, you want the
That's-
deadline for the letter of interest and resumes before June 1st.
No, I'm saying that's when we would choose in the
Oh, I
first
choose it
The June
May,
meeting.
May.
at the May meeting.
The May meeting's like 2 weeks away.
Everyone's already been alerted, and
Well-
I thought
Oh,
everyone's
not
under the,
officially though.
Not officially.
but they're under the impression it's April 20th. Why are we waiting? If one of us
Well,
gets
officially,
ill,
we gotta put it on the, you gotta put
Right.
it out there.
right, but
But
if one of us gets ill, or I have to go north, which is highly probable, you can't do anything.
there's so many things I could say to that. Christie, what do you say?
It's at your pleasure, but Commissioner Costa has pointed out a potential issue of not being able to take any official action. until-
So you think that month, May month would be that
The meeting.
critical?
Is that too much to put on the May agenda, though? Would it make sense to have that meeting and then a special meeting after that, or?
Well, you could do a special meeting, you can do a special meeting anytime you want.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to, you do them special meeting. Well, how much is on the agenda for May? Do you have any idea?
I've not even started doing the final compilation for the May agenda. The deadline for agenda items would be this Friday, so
Well, we could, if you really want to extend the deadline beyond the 20th, you could go to the 26th or the 28th of April. That's a Wednesday and a Friday, and the meeting's the following Monday.
but you have to give Kelly time to make sure that they meet the qualified elector status and
How much time do you need to do that, Kelly?
I just gotta double check to make sure that everybody's. right.
So it's better to close it down on the 26th, which is a Wednesday, which gives you a couple days. That's what I would do. Put the notice out, all resumes and information has to be in by the 26th. For the town commission meeting, we're already set on the April 20th for the two boards. And move forward. Any problems?
I don't know. I think you may be kind of forcing a little bit. Or at least do one. I mean, would you do two at the same time? But you have to have, what if somebody turns in their stuff? Would you say that date you were 28th?
26th is a Wednesday, 28th is a Friday.
Right, so 26th, so the next date, May 1st, is that Monday.
Correct.
So is that enough time to really vet anybody new that would be coming up?
And then you have someone stepping into that seat, like, when would they have a staff meeting?
Well,
they wouldn't have a staff meeting before the May 1 meeting. They'd be appointed at the May 1 meeting and
right,
Putting
but so
someone in a
here's,
voting
here's my,
position without having.
But see, we can vote on stuff in the May meeting, that's what I'm saying. Why are we pushing it? Then we just do either a special meeting in the middle of May or you do it June 1st.
I have a different approach. I think we ought to appoint the two immediately in May. And I also, to Lynn's point, because in that same meeting, we're gonna be appointing the Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning.
Yeah, well, May meeting, we do that,
So,
that is the point.
Right now, we have 3 candidates for commission, right? So,
We do?
yeah. We already have, there's sheets
Oh,
in
no,
town
okay.
hall where the town's fully aware there's openings. So we make an extra 3 books, they're handed out to the 3 candidates so they can review the resumes of the Board of Adjustments and the P and Z applicants and then make an informed vote. I don't know why we're delaying. I guess that's my issue. The town's been in, what do we want to call it? Quagmire for a bit here. It's time to move forward.
I don't know about a quagmire. I mean, actually, it's like, to me, it's like a bright new day. The sun came
Yeah,
up
now,
and like,
yeah.
oh. So, yeah, we're moving forward, I'd like to take some little baby steps. I mean, jumping right in, but okay, is that the consensus? Is that what you'd like to do? Or-
Well, is that in your experience, do you think that giving, notice and having people submit their interest by the 26th is enough?
I think the 26th probably makes more sense than Friday with us just making the formal announcement today.
And Chrissy, all this is,
Up to your discretion.
okay.
Yep.
So what do you think?
I understand where Steve's coming from, that, in the, unlikely, hopefully unlikely event he has to leave town.
All right.
So we good?
then what we'll do is we'll put it out there right now officially. And the cutoff date's the 26th of April, and during May meeting, we can choose, or not. Doesn't mean that we're gonna all agree on a person, or persons.
So we agree?
You have public comment?
Oh, you have a comment?
Well, just,
Come on up.
I lived here a long time, as you know, and.
Yeah, but
we
Mayor,
have a
state
lot-
your name and address for the record, you know the drill.
Jerry Brown, Harbor Drive South. And there's an awful lot of people that live in this town who love it, but they live other places part of the year. So I know you can't put the squeeze on them, but you really need to have people who are gonna serve in any capacity in any board to be year-round residents. Someone goes away for a couple of weeks and, parties and has a good time. That's different from someone who has a home somewhere else and tries to fake it that they're really a resident and can't really conduct the work. So I don't know how you would make that known in the application that you're looking for year-round folks that are residents. Does that make sense? I mean,
That makes a lot of sense.
Phrase that properly in your advertising.
Well, you could put in the advertisement, if a commissioner misses three meetings, they're bounced.
Yeah, but I've never seen that happen, have you?
I don't think anyone's missed 3 meetings.
Well, because if you have 5 people, they miss 3 meetings, but 3 meetings consecutively is what I would, 3 meetings
I can't
all
remember.
throughout the year.
Consecutively.
How many meetings you've missed?
And to
In 5 years.
5 years.
and Commissioner Cassidy's comment about vacancies and getting a first person in, when you make that appointment, make it instant. Swear them in and they can take the seat.
Yep.
I mean, if they want it, then that's the way to do it. Then you have 4. And you can make the other one either at the same time or whatever your other deadline is.
Yeah.
Apparently you have people that are always champing at the bit to be sitting over there, so you can look at those first.
So we're agreed to,
Any other public comment where we have the comment on this? Okay.
so agreed to have the deadline close at 26. We vote at the May 1 meeting. And also any candidates for commissioner are handed the resumes of P and Z and Board of Adjustments in case they come up here and then have to make a decision. Okay, one other thing I'd like to say before we approve that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There's been an absolute outpouring of talented people wanting to be on P and Z and Board of Adjustments. I never remember this in previous years. You might tell you that we have really superior candidates that are coming, they want to serve the town. It's the most I've ever seen apply for these positions. I just want to say thank you to all the residents that applied. Can we vote?
Okay. Do we need consensus on that? Or we don't need a vote on that, do we? It's a consensus.
Consensus is fine.
So we're all straight on the dates and the timing and everything. All right. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes. Discussion of town commission goals, FY '23 and '24. Lynn?
Mr. Mayor, each year before getting too far into the budget, it's important to sit down and review with the commission and department heads the priorities that are for the upcoming fiscal year to ensure that those items are addressed in the immediate budget and CIP for the next 5 years. To that end, I've put together the following topics that I believe are important to the commission to consider when setting that direction for the upcoming year. It's just a starting point and by no means all inclusive. I've also made copies of the CIP from last year's budget.
Thank you.
Under capital improvement projects, major areas include our infrastructure, which is our potable water,
Excuse me,
Yes.
Kelly, could you put that up? This,
We have potable water, our water distribution infrastructure upgrades, septic to sewer, stormwater, and all of the easements that go with that. The Ocean Avenue street lights, along with the DOT mill and overlay project that they are currently planning. The town hall drain field, which has been put off for several years, as well as the public beach crossovers. Under IT, we've got the completion of the financial management software implementation, we've gotten a timeline on, which will be in January of 2024. The building permit software, right now we're talking to Tyler, as well as we've looked at an alternative. Upgrading the remote access for the town hall staff. Right now, our remote access is what I would consider lacking at best through the VPN system that we've got. And we've also got our website update that we're in the process of doing. Employee development, team building, staff morale, additional training, workplace safety. And to be honest, this is the first community that I've been in where we don't do a monthly safety training for all of the departments. I know the police department probably does their regular safety training as required, especially with the accreditation they're going through. But especially with Public Works, we should be doing OSHA training for that, as well as required workplace safety training for our front of the town hall staff, which helps reduce our property and liability insurance and our workers' comp insurance. Staffing and succession planning. As we've seen a significant amount of turnover in both the police department and the front hall staff, it's become very obvious that we have not done a very good job of succession planning. We also have a treasurer that has a significant amount of years and tenure with the city who has mentioned that she will be retiring at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, and it's important to make sure that we plan for that succession. She is basically a key person in town hall staff, and making sure that we have planned for that, but also recognizing that when she was made our HR administrator, she was given no HR training, and that's an important thing that should be rectified if she's going to continue as HR, or whoever continues as our HR, making sure that they do have that HR training, whether it's through our insurance company or through other means. Those are very important things for the town to consider as HR, and the risk management that goes with that holds a lot of liability for the town, including the work comp that goes with that. Then you get into professional services. As you look at our insurances, whether it be our property and liability insurances, whether you look at our benefits, medical, dental, vision, life insurance, things like that, we haven't bid those in several years. We also use a financial investment brokerage company to do our benefits. That's probably not in our best interest because that's not what they specialize in, and it's probably better that we look to a company that specializes in employee benefits. So that's something we should look at. Our planning services. Not that we're not perfectly happy with place planning, but we haven't bid. We just keep renewing that contract. Are we getting the best pricing for that contract? Are we getting the best services for that? Building services. We've been contracting with Hybrid. Now we've added CapGov. Are we going to move forward with bringing in a building official full time? And if so, what do we want to do for third-party building services? What contracts do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And what do we want to contract with them for? And making sure that those contracts are current. IT, again, looking at that contract, that is a 2015 contract that has continued to have amendments and renewals, not rebid. Is that the best contract for us? Is that the best service for us? They're based out of Melbourne, Florida, not close. Is there another third-party IT contractor that's closer that would be better on-site? Yes, they provide us 24-hour unlimited remote login, but if we need somebody on-site, especially with Chief Jones no longer here to do a lot of the on-site, is that in our best interest to have a company out of Melbourne that we then have to pay to travel to Ocean Ridge, because that's a long distance? Christie's contract, legal services, that contract expired and is on a month to month. Do we want to just renew that contract? How do we move forward with that? Our engineering contract, again, it's a service that we have just renewed for years and years. We can continue to do that, but similar to everything else, legal, engineering, auditing, IT, those are things that generally, after 5 to 7 years, if you haven't rebid them occasionally, are you getting the best pricing? Are they happy with the pricing that they're giving you? Just because you've got the annual renewals at the end of the contract, that doesn't mean both parties are actually really happy with the services. Is it time that we say, after so many renewals of the contract, we actually rebid or look at what other options there are out there? And this would be the time to be doing that if we're going to do that. Not saying that our best purchase acquisitions isn't best, not saying that we don't want to stay with all the contractors that we have, but these are things that we need to be considering. Have had several people in the time that I've been here talking about they would like to have more community events. If we're going to have more community events, who's paying for them? Most communities that have community events have a community development department. That community development department goes out and gets corporate sponsors, business sponsors. Well, as we know, we don't have a lot of businesses in Ocean Ridge by choice. So are we going to put the cost of putting those events on the taxpayers, or how are we going to fund these events? Not only that, how are we going to plan these events? Staff is already at maximum workload. Several of us work well beyond 40 hours a week. Some of us work a lot of weekends. So who's going to put on the events? Who's going to plan the events? If staff's going to be required to participate and man the events, is it going to be voluntary or is it going to be required? And if it's going to be required for the non-salaried staff, are they going to be paid for it? How are the events going to be advertised? Civic Ready is actually supposed to be an emergency alert system, not the way we currently use it now, where we put out lost animal alerts and notices about the newsletters and things like that. We need to find a different method of alerting the residents to those types of things, because right now, when you use Civic Ready for those types of notices, when there is an emergency, people have become so numbed to them, that they no longer pay attention to them. They don't know that it's actually an emergency. So we need to figure out a better way to advertise our events. So those are some of the big things that I have questions about as we go into the budget year. And I know Scott has some questions. I know Billy's got a lot of infrastructure questions, and I'm sure you as commissioners have a lot of questions, especially with everything that I've brought up. It's not the typical budget goals workshop session that you're used to.
Well, I'm just wondering what you left out. I mean, holy cow. I mean, goal setting, I thought, all right, and then get goal setting, septic sewer. I mean, the party planner? So should we hear from
You can hear from Billy, or you can hear from Scott
Chief
first.
or Scott? Scott, you want to go first?
Sure, I wasn't really.
I mean, so there's a wish
what to
kind of list
expect.
thing, or what are we doing?
I'd like to upgrade our license plate reader system to be an all-inclusive
Is that on the,
system with a
budget?
flock. I'm sorry.
is this on that budget?
No, this is last year's
This
budget.
last year.
Yeah, but some of it has transferred.
Yeah,
The flock system, which we could replace, our aging system that we have now. I have the town security system, which the town manager has addressed with the door entry system, the security, video surveillance, vehicle replacement would be another item in the salary adjustment that Chief Jones had brought forward for the next budget year, the second part tier of the salary adjustment for the officers. And that's all right now.
So license plate recognition system, are we currently working with Flock? Because they were here at the crime prevention seminar.
They're privately, we have 6 flock cameras, they're privately funded, in the north, in the south, and Briny, and then the development in the north end of town. Systems that we pay for is Genoptic, I think we've had it since 2018, and it's failed a bunch, it's failed right now, we haven't had it to work in over a month, but it is very imperative that we, for detective and crime-solving capabilities, that we have this system running, and
That's what's on the bridges?
that is on the entry to the south. There's one at McCormick Mile south by Briny, and the Woolbright and Ocean Avenue Bridge.
So we're most vulnerable, there are spots we don't want to be vulnerable.
Right, correct. Surrounding agencies, just in the last 2 weeks, Nalapan had an occupied burglary to a garage and a car stolen. Palm Beach had 2 cars stolen in the last 2 weeks. Gulfstream had a purse snatching in broad daylight and a car stolen from following the resident home. We have not had anything.
Wow.
Your list is quite much smaller than town managers. So that's great. Billy, you got something?
Oh, you want to hear my list?
Well, no, not the comprehensive one of tearing out every, water line in town,
No,
replacing it. We already know that.
No, I'll just give you all a quick rundown and then we can work further.
Okay.
As you know, we have stuff that needs to be done on our water line infrastructures
Mhm.
that we didn't do in the past few years. If we decide to move forward, we should consider it. Street lights on Ocean Avenue are a big topic with FDOT for us right now. So I would really like to see if we can move forward with getting something accomplished along with the overlay. They've hit us on not enough light, not enough Loomis. There's not enough light on Ocean Avenue for safety reasons. So that's one big item. Our pump stations, we've been working on refurbishing of the pumps. We still have a lot to go.
Which one? The one at Tropical or the one over here?
Tropical I've been working on. I still have all the Woolbright to go, so that's gonna be a continuing thing. The other one, and I can hear it now. I got a 22-year-old generator sitting at Woolbright that I'm milking again.
Is that the main
Did we-
one to the
That's the
attention?
main one.
Yeah. Didn't we refurbish that a couple of years ago?
We had a front main seal leak and I went dumping oil. So I had a front main seal put in it. But it's the same age as this generator that we just replaced out here. And I have got.
So the same cost?
As that one, believe it or not, yes.
What's the cost? Yeah.
About 160,000
160,000?
for a 250K. The one at Tropical,
Mm-hmm.
it's close to 300,000. And don't ask me why.
Well, is there any way to refurbish that kind of equipment?
The generator,
Yeah.
the problem I'm running into with that Cummings down there
Yeah.
is all the computer boards and the internal workings of it. They do not manufacture them anymore.
But you did check into that company that may do that? I mean, because replacing a $300,000 generator.
No, the one at Tropical, we paid $300,000. The quote I've got, that was 2 years ago. I'm still waiting on it. The cost I've got for in-house doing it, like Richard and I did here, for Woolbright is about $155,000
Okay.
What do you mean by in-house?
without getting a lot of engineers and technical stuff.
You mean we get a new
Brand
generator,
new
but you
generator.
install it? versus-
I would have it installed without a lot of paperwork and
Similar to the way we replaced the generator
Just like-
here at Town
okay.
Hall.
Richard and I just did this, had it come out, everything
Yeah.
sized properly and had it put in.
That's great. So maybe it'll help me understand
Yes, sir.
on this, and it's more of a Lynn question, but Billy might know the answer. See, we get 1, 2, 3, 16, 17, 18, and 19. These are approved monies, and it says in progress, in progress, in progress, in progress, including the streetlights. So that means we already have this money left over from last year's budget for these items?
No, because when we looked at the Ocean Avenue streetlights in 2022.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, you budgeted
I think 150,
125.
$125,000 for it. And that wasn't going to touch the actual, what the project actually was going to end up being.
The streetlights are gonna cost more than 125?
Oh, yes.
You're sitting down, would you like me to give you a ballpark?
Yeah.
About $900,000.
What?
To replace streetlights?
Yes.
We have 56 streetlights out there. And not only do we need to consider just the streetlights, I am constantly replacing, and I'm gonna guess we're spending $500 to $600 a month on the wires and all the FDOT plugs that have been out there for 25 years that are in the salt water when it floods. All of that's encumbered in that.
What you're talking about is 56 heads and the arms and the poles, which all have to be either replaced or refurbished, rewired,
And brought up to FDOT specs.
and brought up to FDOT specs. You're also looking at the fact that you cannot get streetlights anymore that are not LED, which I know this community is not happy about FDOT or LED lights, but you're not going to be able to get the old
Metal hydrant.
metal halide type streetlights anymore. They just don't make them. FDOT has already contacted me about the fact that at A1A and Ocean Avenue, the intersection streetlights do not meet the minimum lumens necessary, and they have to be upgraded at the very least as part of their overlay project.
You mean the stoplights or the
The
streetlights?
streetlights.
Streetlights at the intersection.
Yes.
So, does
And
it
at
make
Woolbright
sense to
as
do
well.
this piecemeal, or is it a waste of money because you're attaching old equipment to new equipment?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, we're dealing with those poles out there, they're in the 26-year-old. By the time we try to put a new head on it, new arm, then those poles are gonna have to be sandblasted and painted, not powder coated. I can't powder coat them again. So you're gonna try and piecemeal from 3 different vendors to hopefully come up with a product that's gonna last, and we're still dealing with a 25 or 26-year-old pole.
Well, if FDOT is so hot on making us make these lights brighter, are they getting any money that they can, give us or, help out in the replacement of the lights that they're so screaming
Well,
about?
what they will say is our options are we can replace with decorative lights ourselves, or we can let them replace with their standard street lights and just pay the electric bill.
They
But we
pay
pay
the
like a
install.
bill. Their streetlights.
I don't know what their streetlights
It
are.
would
One of
be
those-
kind of like a street light you'd see in Walmart parking lot, straight up with an arm out and a head.
But it doesn't cost us $1 million.
Yeah,
Oh,
can we look at
I
what
can
the,
get us prices on a standard street light. The prices I got are similar to, as we all talked last year and the year before, a decorative, teal color to match the city of Boynton, to match the bridge. That was the problem we ran into when we started trying to piecemeal this last year together, not to mention it was all LED.
Well, if we're gonna do something with Ocean Avenue.
Yeah.
Why don't we do really something with it? Like create an island in the middle when you come over the bridge where we can have our sign right in the middle of the island as you come over. So really make it so when you're coming over, you're not looking at this huge road, breaks it up a little bit. So create a total budget for redoing the whole street,
So you
as well as
slows down the
drainage
traffic
and-
too.
But again, you're talking about an FDOT road that they've already spent probably a year and a half designing the mill and overlay project of, and now you're gonna ask them to completely redesign to put a decorative island in the middle of.
Absolutely, that's what we're gonna ask them.
That
I
they're
mean,
gonna
because the way I
have-
look at it is, I know FDOT has their deal, but that
we have that problem with them on the, trying to build up that south side pond and wall it in. You hear about that?
Yeah.
So they're not being our friends right now.
But that's all gonna be at our cost.
Right, but by the way, there was, unless I misremember, there was a design for that island. And the problem that the design exposed was there were two driveways that were gonna have to head in one direction versus the other direction. But so what? They can do a UE
Exactly.
down. So we had this discussion 2 or 3 years ago. And it also, remember the points brought up at the last commission meeting about 7,000 people in the next 3 years on the other side of the bridge.
Mhm.
So it differentiates us and tells people, sort of like the town down in Miami with the Spanish Moss, I can't get the name of it. You know, when you go into that town, you immediately quiet down. You feel it.
But anyway, on to your, so is there anything else you have that's?
Nothing.
Throw any more bombs?
No, I'm just, hey, this is goals. I'm just getting, as we start to work through it. These are things I'll bring to your attention. How we decide to work through it, or you folks decide to work through it. I just want everybody to be aware of what's going on out there.
Okay.
And we can work on them, or we can move them, whatever so desires.
When you would talk about the water main replacements and that are with the ARPA funding,
Yes, ma'am.
we had like 900,000 in ARPA funds, right?
Mhm.
So this is 489. Why wouldn't we be moving?
Other infrastructure.
And it will not probably even come close to touching that water line out there. You're probably looking to 2 million. Up here, as we're talking about investing grants and what we have right now, I brought the question up to Lynn as well. Where are you?
You have obviously, the last negotiation session we had, that was what Boynton threw out there, and what we kind of threw back at Boynton was, which I think, Billy was sort of mentioning is, well, right now, the town of Ocean Ridge owns its service area in terms of water and sewer. So the town decides who provides our water and sewer service right now, because we own the service area. There's value in service areas. So you could sell your entire service area to the city of Boynton. And if they took that over, obviously, this is revenue producing, utilities always are. Would they take that and then provide us with the sewer service, including the installation or some type of agreement like that? The other option that's being proposed, that's, they're looking at, Neil Hennigan, is having a third-party utility come in and essentially create the utility for Ocean Ridge. So you're working through a third party to develop your own utility. So those are some of the three major options. Obviously, there's variations on each that need to be looked at. I think Billy has a good point, because on the one hand, are you going to invest in your current infrastructure that you own, while at the same time knowing you may be selling it out? Now, the counter argument to that is obvious on Boynton is, I'm not taking over your pipes unless they're at, some type of level where I can be assured that I'm going to meet those revenue production projections that certainly Boynton's gonna have going into buying another utility. So those are a variety of issues that need to be looked at and vetted.
When's the next
Hypo-
negotiation with
Hypoluxo
Boynton?
did that, right? Hypoluxo did just that they sold their service area to Boynton Beach, and they're doing the water and the sewer.
So when you
it would
sell your
be-
service area, does that include the pipes?
Yes,
Yes.
They maintain
and
the
the
pipes.
maintenance of the
yes.
But in
pipes.
response, they they put your water bill higher per unit to cover their costs.
And yeah, I'm certainly, they do, studies to figure out how much it's gonna cost them to buy a service area, to bring up the infrastructure to their desired level, or to install infrastructure. They figure out what the cost of that, and then you just project it out, and that will likely increase the rates that they charge, or may include some kind of special assessment. But if the town were to develop its own utility, you're gonna be looking at those things as well, because there's a huge capital outlay to start your own utility. In addition to, now you've gotta start doing your billing, now you gotta do your own permitting for your own utility system.
And all the
With-
repairs and new infrastructure.
Right, but, so what we need to do is a detailed projected cost analysis of our different options, right? And then, good time maybe to mention, talking about the septic to sewer, while we're on the sewer water conversation, we also talked about, one of the shortcomings of our septic to sewer committee was that as an advisory committee to the commission, or being sanctioned by the town, they're subject to the sunshine laws. But it's been done in other communities where you can have, we could create something different to replace it, like an educational task force, which is not sanctioned by the town. Members are, get together at will, and then you could have a commissioner sit on that task force as the liaison to the commission, and thereby not being subject to sunshine laws. And I've spoken to a couple people on the current septic to sewer who would be interested in going into something new like that. So,
Is that difficult or simple, yeah, let's do it that?
Right, as long as they're not created by the town and really are seen as an advisory board to the town in terms of making recommendations to the town, they don't become subject to sunshine law. So if you sort of create this task force really outside the town commission in town hall, you can certainly have a liaison from the town commission to this sort of task force. And then it's a group of volunteer residents and citizens that are researching an issue to make recommendations to the town, but it's really on their time. They're volunteers, and since they're not subject to sunshine, they can get together as they want and talk about different issues, and you don't have to have publicly noticed meetings, you don't have to have, minutes and those types of things. So it's a different way to do it, and sometimes you can get more done doing it without being subject to the sunshine. It just depends on, at some point, do you make them a sanctioned committee? Because now it's starting to form up, and now you've got, more of a clear direction.
So by sanction, you mean then they go into sunshine?
right,
Right.
correct.
When does the contract up with Boynton? When they're supposed to renew it?
It expired back during COVID.
Did it really?
Yeah.
All right, so that goal should be, one of the main goals is we're getting this Boynton water contract completed for this year.
But also figuring out what we're doing.
Well, that's in that
Yeah.
scope of work.
But looking at it as a package too.
Absolutely. One way you can get them to pay for putting sewer in the same time.
Christie, how do we go about making the septic to sewer non-sunshine like now? Is that a very simple change of a few adjectives?
We just disband and recreate.
I don't know how they were originally set up, if it was done by resolution or if it was just done informally.
They were done by resolution and appointed, each commissioner appointed a member.
That's right.
So if the resolution didn't have a sunset date, you could just do a resolution to sunset them and then allow them to do their own thing and form up on their own. And
So what do you think?
Put it on the May.
Yeah, put it on the May agenda.
Can I comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Public comment.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. And all this discussion of water and sewer, Steve Claus is the only person that came close to what the big problem is. You sell your service area to Boynton or anyone else. All that traffic, sewer traffic is gonna go to Boynton. They set the rates. Your ratepayers, all your residents are stuck. You have no control over it. They're stuck in that system. And their plant is, regardless of what they tell you, that Boynton Delray plant down there needs major upgrade. Who do you think is gonna pay for that? The ratepayer. If they're gonna increase their rates per unit, however they wanna do it, volume wise, unit wise. You'll have all the residents coming in here complaining that the sewer and water has gone up, and you'll say there's nothing we can do about it, because we don't own it anymore. We gave it to them. And they'll establish all the infrastructure that they need to keep that. One of the reasons why they want Ocean Ridge and why they want to keep all these other little small towns, they want the revenue. You nailed it right on the head. They have to upgrade that plant down there that serves both Delray and Boynton.
I believe there are two separate wastewater treatment plants.
I beg your pardon?
I believe there are two separate
Yes,
wastewater
but
treatment
there are
plants.
these-
Delray had the problem, but,
Your ratepayer is gonna pay for any upgrade they have to do.
so are
And
you
that's
suggesting we
what
don't
I'm
do sewer? We shouldn't do sewer at all? Because we're never gonna have a wastewater treatment facility here for the sewer.
I'm not a believer in converting to sewer, so I'll make that clear. And I have other reasons for that, mostly development. But there are plants that DEP has approved for coastal barrier islands, and we are a small community. In their minds, it's de minimis what we send into the intercoastal. You got 3 plants up there on the north end of town that send that treated poop right into the intercoastal. Right on Island Drive, whoever lives up there, they're getting that right in their backyard. So it's already happening that way. You put sewer in here, my fear is that you're gonna get a lot of development. But aside from that, it's the ratepayer that's gonna be locked in that system forever and ever, and you won't have any control over it all. It'll be controlled by someone else.
Thank you. Now, the thing is, that even if we didn't do the septic, we did the water lines, we replaced all the water lines in town.
As Christie pointed out.
Boy, let me finish. The thing is that you're gonna pay for it anyway, because we're gonna have to raise taxes in order to pay for all that infrastructure improvement.
Exactly, that's a scenario where you.
Yeah, so I mean.
And I've seen some of the galvanized pipe.
Yeah, me too. And some was
I've been to
expensive, some was,
facilities, I know.
it's been all over the place.
And they need to be replaced.
Thanks. I got it.
But the sewer thing is completely separate.
Mhm.
That is a biggie. But that's my opinion about what you need to look at. You need to look at what your residents are gonna be paying for whatever you do with that infrastructure. And as far as contracts rebidding, professional contracts are exempt from bidding. Bless us if we ever lose Christie right now as an attorney. I don't know what she does on the weekend to recover, to come back in here, but you got a damn good attorney, and you don't want to mess with that contract. You want to renegotiate it and talk to them about price. The same thing with any other professional contract. If you're happy with the service they're providing, I know I did this for years. If you're happy with the service, you negotiate the price or the conditions or whatever.
Yeah, we've been doing that, Terry.
Yeah.
I think we've had Presidia and the group for a while now, haven't we?
Spillage
Yeah.
is part of it.
But I'm saying any professional contract is not required to be bid.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Let's continue on with the goal setting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
To answer Mr. Brown's comment about paying for the capital improvements on the wastewater plant, there are ways when you negotiate a contract to limit that, and I've done that in other communities, to where you put in the contract where the community and the ratepayers, you're only able to have passed on to you the cost of capital improvements specifically that can be attributed to the infrastructure that benefits your community. So if they're doing major upgrades that benefits their other customers, they have to show what percentage of those benefits actually benefit the town of Ocean Ridge, and only that percentage of the improvements can be used to increase our rates. That way, we're not paying the same amount as everyone else, and it limits any kind of rate increases that they could pass on to us.
Don't we have that with our current water contract? They can't charge us more than they charge a Boynton resident?
I believe so. I mean, right now we pay city rates
Yeah.
rather than out-of-city rates. But again, a lot of times there are capital improvement costs that they will pass on to people. But again, as a, if they're buying us as an out-of-service area, as a new service area, as Mr. Brown was pointing out, a lot of times they will pass on to those service areas additional capital improvement costs, and you can limit those in how you negotiate the contract.
All right.
So back to your original point, this seems to be a goal priority.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do we,
You guys have given me a consensus that
Okay.
making sure that those contracts are negotiated.
and we don't even know which option we're gonna end up at.
We don't know.
But we do have the FGUA coming at the main meeting to talk to you as well.
And I do believe the town already has a rate consultant.
Ruff Dallas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a contract that would assist the town in looking at the different options.
Should they be at the May meeting?
Are we gonna,
I don't think that they need to be at the main meeting. I think it's right now just preliminary stage of deciding, do we want to create a, utility and go with something else, or do we want to look at having Boynton Beach? Do we want to negotiate both directions?
I would say, I don't know what it means to create a utility, but the sound of it doesn't sound right for Ocean Ridge.
yeah.
Not
for
internally,
this-
no. I mean, it would mean hiring a lot more staff. Additional software, monthly billings, or going with quarterly billings. There's a lot of decisions that would have to be made.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Arthur Zib, 9 Osprey Drive. I was on the septic to sewer committee, and when we first got started, we were asked to look into the contract with Boynton Water. I just want to make one, what I think is a factual point, is that you're correct, that the town pays the same rates as Boynton, whereas under Florida law, they're allowed to put in, I don't know, 15 or 25% surcharge. The reason they did not do that is because the town had total responsibility for the infrastructure. So in reality, one can make the argument that the town of Ocean Ridge has been overpaying for all these years, because a portion of the Boynton water and sewer rate includes the amounts that goes for their infrastructure and otherwise would have been applied here. So I just wanted to point that out, that where that rate structure is, why you're only paying Boynton rates and not paying that, they never charged you that 15 or 25% surcharge. It was because the town said, we're gonna keep and maintain our own pipes, and then those extra costs are included in the town's budget. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if there's any way to do an analysis of what we spent the last, say, 10 years on our pipes? Put that in. Can you do that, Billy? 15 years? And bring that as part of the, okay, what have we actually spent?
I can get you a good ballpark.
Okay.
Okay, will that be all right?
That'd be great.
Exact number might be a little.
No, ballpark's fine.
Is the point where we're reaching the point of no return where everything's just gonna collapse?
We are getting there. And the only thing I brought up, and the reason I brought it up, and we're on that, sorry, Terry, the sewer, that's time you need to think about wanting to upgrade your potable water systems. If you're gonna go in and do a septic to sewer conversion, that's when you need to think about doing everything else, where you already have roads dug up, where you have all this.
Well, yeah, we would
construction going
we
on,
also include like
which is
gas line in there too, if we're gonna do something like that.
Gas line.
You've been talking about
But
that.
that would
for
be
Years.
I mean,
But a natural gas line, imagine how that would be helpful.
That's the
Your
time.
generators, everything would be on.
we've talked about easements, that's the time to consider our storm drain system. On some of the islands.
Yeah.
They are horrible. We're dealing with old pipes that are 60 years old. And
Well, that's a major capital project, so.
yeah, but what I'm bringing up is just things to consider on all of these long-term projects that we're considering or you're considering. Don't forget of other things that will come into play there.
Thank you.
It may be beyond me, beyond you, but it's for the future of the town if we decide to go there.
Thank you.
One more thing on
Yes,
the,
ma'am.
on the sewer, just to kind of address what you said. By getting public sewer, it would be a very positive impact on our environment. By putting all of our stuff right in the ground and leaving it there, that is not environmentally friendly. But getting it out of here and having it treated would be much more, conducive to a healthy environment. And the threat of development, we have our code to protect us from that.
Well, the threat of development, I think you're talking about Brian agrees.
I mean,
and
two
then,
public hearings, 3 commissioners, codes can be changed.
so anyways,
Zoning can be changed, she'll tell you.
I think we've
It's
debated
easy to do
the
it.
sewer.
Watch what they're doing in West Palm Beach.
All right,
I mean,
all right,
it's
all right.
doing it all over.
Sir, okay, we got it.
All right.
All right, let's moving on
Well-
from septic to water. We've already done that, so.
In line with all of that, and it's not really something people talk about here, and it seems to be not talked about a lot in Florida, the lead and copper pipe requirements under the 2024 deadline for basically doing an inventory of every service line within the town. I talked to Richard Radcliffe at the League of Cities. He says Ocean Ridge isn't that old. We don't really need to pay much attention to it. But we are still required under the Clean Water Act, which is a federal EPA requirement, to submit a survey of all of the service lines, a service line inventory by the end of 2024 that identifies every service line and whether it is a plastic service line, or like a PVC, whether it is a copper line, whether it is cast iron, whether it is Orangeburg pipe, whether it is galvanized, and when it was installed.
All right, let me interrupt you. I get all that. Let's just go ahead and move on. But the thing about it is that we have to talk to Lisa Tropepi, because I believe that years ago, we actually did a survey of what pipes were which, because a lot of those asbestos pipes we had to pull out and replace.
This isn't the mains, these are individual service lines to each person's house.
Well, I can tell you right now, each one of those is either PVC or copper or maybe galvanized pipe. I mean, 1936, that's when we were here. So let's not beat this thing to death. We get it.
But what did Radcliffe say? He says they'll ignore you because you're a small
Because of the
town.
size of the town.
Right, so
He said most of
That's the
Florida
point.
is not, he said.
I'd say that's low on our priority list, hearing Radcliffe's opinion.
All right, let's not,
Okay.
we're going to talk about this again in May, order. All right, what else we have on here?
So, we've pretty well covered infrastructure. IT is all pretty much in progress, other than the building permits we're still working on. The employee development, where would you like to see us put our emphasis for 2024?
In IT generally?
Well, most of the IT projects are current, and there might be a few desktop or things like that. In IT, one major thing what is the commission's stance on moving all of the boards, the commission, the planning and zoning, and the board of adjustment, to laptops or tablets and electronic packets, and getting rid of the paper and the paper expense?
So you mean you provide us with an iPad?
The town
An iPad.
would purchase
Oh,
a
I can do
laptop
that.
or a tablet. We would also, Kelly has looked at an agenda management software that would then collate all of the packets. It would make the
I'm
packets.
not against it, but why do you think we need this?
Well, right now, we spend and waste, I would say, probably $10,000 to $20,000 a year on paper just for packets for the three boards.
Probably more than that with this construction site management handbook that's 23 pages.
And that's just board packets.
This
But
is-
the owner has to sign it, not only the contract.
I mean, it's unbelievable. But this is another whole.
Yeah, I'm talking just the packets for the
Paper.
meetings.
Yeah.
The packets just for meetings that go in the binders, or like what you got today. We probably spend,
Well, how much would it be to buy a Chromebook for every single board member, commission member, and do the training and?
I have asked for a estimate for the budget, keeping in mind that, yes, 1 year upfront, there would be a, initial upfront cost, but you've got a depreciation cost, and it's a one-time upfront cost. The board members would have it through their terms, they would turn it over. It would be, the hard drives would be archived and then reformatted for whoever is reappointed, and then, reissued until it's no longer usable. So usually, 5 to 7 years for a basic tablet or laptop. So you could get, at least 2 terms out of a single unit, as long as people don't just throw it away, around and destroy it.
You remember that famous Bill Belichick and the laptop?
I have seen.
Have you worked with a town that's switched over to, I call it iPad, switched to the iPad?
Yes, I have.
And what's the complaint?
The biggest complaint are for what they call Luddites, people that are not familiar with technology, and their unwillingness to learn, and they want to stay with paper.
Well, they can still take a paper, they can print it out themselves if they want to.
Correct.
All right, so then why don't we go ahead and move this along and say, okay, let's bring up, because we're going in the budget now, how much would that cost?
Yeah.
And basically, hey, this is what we would save in paper costs and time, obviously in the time of printing, correlating everything and putting it all together. And then do that analysis, that way we can make a right decision on, do we want them or not?
Okay.
Now, what about the employee training that you were saying?
Employee training, like I said, we have a lot of employees that could use training, retraining, workplace safety training, succession planning. With all the turnover, staff morale is low. I would like to see us, in addition to, our quarterly employee of the quarter, at least every 6 months, some sort of a, team building, staff, cookouts, that type of thing. Better training, required training for staff, the front staff required continuing education, not just voluntary, so that as people get promoted, as people get new job responsibilities, we make sure that they're properly trained for the responsibilities that they're doing. And the workplace safety, so that we can reduce some of our insurance costs with work comp and property and liability insurances.
So best business practices would require that training, not the barbecue and all that, but the training for the workman's comp, the safety, some of that's required by a state statute, I imagine.
No.
Huh? Okay, but that would be the best practices under our attorney would be if we have these folks under insurance and we're not training them correctly and something happens, we're going to be liable for it. Is that the case? Yes or no?
It depends on what type of training you're talking about and the type of issue.
Well, I think the
regarding
OSHA training is probably something that would be pretty important.
Right, technically,
But what-
municipalities in the state of Florida are exempt from federal OSHA.
Cool.
A
Well-
Pidgeot, who does our property and liability, offers online training courses that we could have our staff do. Takes 20 to 30 minutes a month. They can do them on their workstations. Check it off. It gives them a certificate. That way we can stick it in their file. If anybody, then has an accident, and it's from, properly, lifting things so that if somebody lifts a box of paper, which tends to be, 50 pounds, and they throw out their back, we can say we properly train them on how to do that, and, it reduces our work comp liability, that type of thing. There is cybersecurity trainings that you can do so that it limits our liability risk there, and reduces our insurance there, because cybersecurity issues are huge, and employees don't always stay current on what not to click on, what not to do. I can't tell you how many times you read stories of cities that have sent payments to places and lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they didn't catch that an email, actually came from a phishing website that was very similar to a vendor, and said that it was coming from a vendor, and asked them to send it to a different bank account because something was changing, or that type of thing.
Okay, so I get all that. So my thing is, you're the town manager. So if about the best trained employee is a great employee for the town in
Correct.
any business. Well, the well-trained employee is a very good employee. So I get all that. The thing is, I don't want to be training so much and not doing the work that they're supposed to be doing on the other side for the town. So being the town manager, you have to make that call. And yes, you can say, hey, this is what I'm doing, but we're going to kind of rely on your managerial experience to put those best practices in place.
But in the past, these have never been priorities or even options.
Well, maybe we haven't had a good enough town manager to do that.
That's why I'm asking, because.
So is this what you're suggesting you want to budget for the coming year?
Yes.
But I would have team building, morale, workplace safety. The main thing here is the training and the succession. So that's where I would focus your energies in the minutes of the month when the person's going to be trained.
Yes.
And in training.
This is not an OSHA type place.
And in training, do you recommend, or have you had experience doing any sort of cross-training, for lack of a better word? So for instance, when the only person who's capable of doing IT leaves, we're not left with nobody knowing.
Well, that's a whole different. IT is definitely, you need a separate company that can do it, come here and be online. And it's a completely separate company. Yes, you should have maybe somebody on staff that has some sort of knowledge, but to concentrate on one person on staff was a huge mistake. So we need to solve that.
But maybe that company in Melbourne has a staffer that drives from Lantana to Melbourne.
Sure, that's what I'm saying. So that, and they do a lot of that
I
is
mean,
done by
he
online.
lives right next door to us, so he doesn't have to come out from Melbourne. That's my point.
Well,
The company's in Melbourne, so we're calling these guys in Melbourne and have them drive down here. When those guys go home at night, maybe they go to Lantana,
oh, I
maybe
see.
they go to Boynton,
Okay.
so they can come here in the morning.
We skipped over public beach crossovers. Was there something specific in that you wanted to talk about?
Specifically, we rebuilt the Porter Streets, and we've been talking about the Beachway crossing, but we did also get a notification that there may be some issues with ADA access. So just letting you know that right now we're not moving forward with the proposed changes to Beachway. But as things sort of play out over the next few weeks and months as we are putting the budget together for FY24, there may be something that comes up in that budget with private beach crossovers that have to do with that and ADA accessibility.
Well, given that every public crossover we have is abutted on both sides by private property, there's not much we can do other than tell people where the access is at Oceanfront Park.
And your law firm, we went through this 7 years ago. Wiz Khalil was here. Is Khalil there? And there was, the fact that there was a public beach with public access and ramps and toilets and the whole thing allowed us not to worry about ADA compliance.
You know what else they have? They have a beach wheelchair
Oh, they do.
with the big tires that you
Wow.
can use there.
So it was, I think it was during Spillies' time. I can't remember which lawyer it was, but they did a great job and we're totally off the hook because of Point Front Park and the Inlet Park.
Because of the correspondence we received recently, we're relooking at that issue just to make sure that we are up to date and that opinion still stands.
Great, hopefully it will.
Town hall drain field, I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, you gotta fix the drain field.
Well, but again, that's an issue. And last year it got kicked down the road because they weren't sure what we were doing with septic to sewer. Do we want to put it on the FY
You gotta put it
24?
on, but I mean, if it breaks, we're done.
Right?
I mean, when I put
The
portal
drain,
everywhere,
town hall drain field.
it's like the painting, when you guys put the painting off.
The garbage pickup on the weekend on Elevation.
But garbage pick up on the weekend. Anyway, Terry. Now, do you have, is this everything from you? Anything? So you guys want to do ours now?
Lynn's basically covered everything. The only other goal I would, which is kind of an amorphous goal, is this Boynton, we got to address, we always say this every year, and like the island on Ocean. Boynton is coming. Of 6,000 people within what, 300 yards of the Ocean
By
Bridge?
26, yeah.
Yeah.
The analysis Christine did.
So I don't know quite what the goal is.
What happened to the phone etiquette?
I had it on off, and somebody rang and turned my phone back on.
Does it work that way?
Is that the town's phone?
No, Kelly hasn't given it to me. It's
So you
Kelly's
know you
phone.
have the town's? Oh my God. What happened to the gentleman's agreement with the phone?
Yeah, you're right. I forgot, it's the first time I haven't hit do not disturb.
Well, it is a special meeting. So.
Anyway, that's my only thing is,
Well, we do have the bid, I would like also, a very important item is the building department. We need to figure out and straighten out our building department. Whether we want to have a full-time, or we don't want to have a full-time. But see, you can have a full-time building official, but they won't be here every day. I mean, because I know different towns have it. Hypoluxo, like you said, Manalapan has it, Village of Golf. It's the same guy. So why can't Ocean Ridge have it? That way we can kind of push it to a more of a subcontracting basis rather than have an employee that we have to pay all the Florida pay to and everything else. It's just, I think we tried the idea, and I think it may not have worked as well as we wanted it to. But those are the other things, like construction site management handbook. To change out an air conditioner, you gotta sign it in initial 23 pages.
And they don't read it anyway.
It makes no sense. This is the paper thing. Reduction of paper, reduction of time staff. I mean, the staff has to now scan this and put it in with the permits, gotta go in everything. The time,
Notarize it.
oh, it's just unbelievable. So the building department, I think another large issue to straighten out. I think that we're going in the right direction, but we do need to have a discussion regarding that.
yeah.
How are things working out with CapGov with Scott?
I seem to be
But
going.
we've been getting compliments, so that's like,
Yeah,
again,
Positive
breath of fresh
feedback.
air.
Well, do we want to put something on the May agenda or hold it out till June,
Let's hold, I mean, we're already
loading up?
yeah.
loading up on the May agenda. Let's,
Because the one thing on the building department, if you remember when we started, it was like one person. Then it became two persons, then it became three people, then it became extra equipment, then it became more computers, then it became more scanners. The whole thing just blossomed into like the idea of us running our own utility. That's what the building department became.
Yeah.
It was a.
I remember we had Gary Lanker.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a long time ago. We had one guy. Now, the town does do a lot of work, and we do a lot of homes, and a lot of buildings go on. But I do think that a private company or companies, you could use too, could do just as good a job, and then have a building official that is assigned to us by one of those companies that's here 2, 3, 4 days a week. Don was here every day.
Yeah.
From Heiberg, he was here every single day, so, and it worked out fine. I mean,
And then you still have your full-time building clerk, which is Lindsay.
Oh, you definitely have that, because if people, you want to have people, when you come in, you want somebody who knows what's going on to explain to somebody, hey, this is what you need for this type of permit. You know, that's hand paperwork, and then you fill it all out, and then you turn it in, and then a couple days later, well, you didn't give us this and give us that. You know, because the people you're dealing with, especially when it comes down to smaller permits, not the homes. I mean, somebody's building a home, maybe should fill out one of these. But
A lot of
my regular homeowners coming in and putting in grass next to their house like me, and they gave me this assignment, like, what the heck is this all about? But those are the things you want to explain to a homeowner, hey, you know, that's a person paying his taxes, they're paying all their salary. So you want to be a little more,
Reasonable.
yes, that's a perfect word. But anyway, so I think that should be on our agenda at some point.
Who's keeping track of all this? Kevin?
Street line cameras, the street lights, the water lines, building department, oil and water contract.
Can I ask about the sargassum on the beach? Is there any town arrangement to pick up the seaweed in the summer? Because anticipating that we're going to have it worse than last year. I know some areas do it privately. Thinking of the turtles, I actually was at an event this morning and I was sitting with a veterinarian who worked for Gumbo Limbo. And she said when the beaches are loaded with the sargassum, the turtles, their regular senses that they use to find a place to lay their eggs, they get all turned around.
I don't know that, answer that question. I know some beaches do clean their own beaches, but I think we don't.
It's all private.
Right.
Any of it that is done is private, like the private condos, but since I've been here, the town has never done anything.
Does Oceanfront Park do it?
Oceanfront Park does it, yes, and some of the condos, but other than that, you know, the private residents up and down, it's all up to them, none of the town, because the town doesn't own any beach.
Which, can you even rake in turtle season?
No.
So,
Well, Bulldozer was out there last weekend on the south end of town.
I think that there's, I don't think it's banned. I think it's banned in certain
areas.
depths, so to speak. Because I asked the guy if he could take the seaweed and put it to the dune, because he was actively working. And he said he couldn't do that during turtle season.
Right.
But he could non-turtle season, which would be a huge chance for us to build up our dunes.
Oh, absolutely. Betty knows all about that. She's been preaching that for 30 years.
The sargassum seed will keep your dunes nourished. If you want to break it up into the dunes, it'll strengthen your dunes and leave them.
We should stick that on the agenda for later in the year, towards the end of turtle season.
Peter Burling, 7 Osprey Drive. Excuse me for jumping in at this point, but I didn't want to miss. It seems to me there are really 2 issues. We're also glad you're here, but one glaring struggle for this town is going to be how it manages to articulate and inaugurate communications with its own personnel, its own citizens, to get help for some of these issues. I mean, just sitting here for an hour listening to the kinds of things that are piling up. It isn't just sargassum on the beaches. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on. You're going to need help. And I would hope that some thought will go into the question of how could we get people to volunteer their assistance and self-organize so that they can give you meaningful and helpful advice on some of these issues. Otherwise, I just have a vision of you, the 3 of you caught in a, you'd be like Manchester United is on the field and the 3 of you are supposed to deal with it. It isn't going to happen. The other thing, and all of you have touched on this, the episode with the building department said to me, the town really needs to articulate what it means to have in terms of a relationship with its own people. Is a fee structure designed to be a revenue-raising device that makes sure we all have lots of lovely cash, at the expense of homeowners coming in? Or is it a regulatory structure that's designed to make sure our ordinances are properly followed? And I would submit to you, as one who's currently thinking about it, I need to replace a rusted out 10-year-old generator. Am I really gonna file that? Yeah. I mean,
I'm not kidding you.
I've got the original designs for the house, which show it.
Mhm.
I've got the subsequent planning surveys. Is it really what the town wants to do to charge me $1,500 to replace the generator that's already there?
So see, those are things, maybe we change, that's a fee structure, we change the severity of the permit, versus building a house versus putting in a generator, those kind of things, where can it be a day turnaround, to turn on an air conditioner or a water heater, but I think that's already an emergency type of thing.
That's an emergency, yeah.
But, those kind of things, I think are really how we review the building department and change it to where it is customer friendly, because we're the customer.
It just seems to me it's very much the moment in our history when we ought to reevaluate what it is we're doing. Do we respect, honor, and like our inhabitants, or we view them as a nice Guernsey cow to be milked?
No, I think everybody's spoken pretty loudly on where we're going.
Thank you.
But to your point, Peter, we were talking about it before, that Civic Ready should not be used as a public notification. It's more for an emergency. If we had something like maybe every 2 weeks, a newsletter that went out, like I could sit down and help you guys with someone dedicated staff to work on it and say, this is what's going on. You might want to be aware that this is coming up at the next meeting. We're looking for help in the following areas. If you have any expertise or ideas, email, contact person. Just more foster communication, and rather than saying, well, if you wanted to know what was going on at the meeting, you should have looked at the agenda, you should have looked at the packet. A lot of people don't do that. So
I kind of like the Civic Ready. I always look for the cat that's lost when I'm driving around.
The photo.
I have a photo, and I say, yeah, well, I'm here. I might as well kind of keep an eye out for the thing. I kind of like the Civic Ready, but we also have reverse 911 too, in case there's a real emergency. So
Do we have Code Red?
No, Civic Ready is what we use instead of Code Red.
There's Code Red, DART, and Civic Ready, right? Like if you guys have signed up for Code Red, you get blasted by the county.
Right.
Yeah. So everyone should sign up for that, because
that's where they give you the.
But that doesn't tell you if there's an emergency in Ocean Ridge, that just tells you if there's an emergency in Palm Beach County.
correct.
All right.
Whatever you want to do with Civics Ready. I kind of am with Jeff on that. I like the mix.
What else you got?
you want to hear another one?
Go ahead, throw them out there. That's what we're here for.
So you're very familiar with the whole issue with Mr. Swaim, who, we've had lots of lawsuits in town. He still owns a parcel behind Wellington Arms of land underneath the water. Jeff and Amanda Eder own 6480, just north of Town Hall. And I just met the gentleman who owns the empty lot right here. Jeff and Amanda also own 2 small mangrove parcels directly across from their property. And all the other, now that we have purchased, for $1.5 million, 9 acres, the county owns the rest, and then Jeff and Amanda own these 2 little pieces. A lot of what I heard during the campaign was we need to preserve as much green space as we can. It may be worth thinking about purchasing that land from the Eders and rezoning it conservation. It's not in their financial interest to have it rezoned while they own it. And we just did a little, back of the envelope calculation based on the square footage, significantly less than the parcel we bought, but it might be something to look at in the future. It would box out Swaim from any access to that property.
Chrissy, you about to say something?
I think there would be a conversation we need to have offline.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry if I misspoke.
No, you're fine.
What else you got on that list?
public comment is a concern of mine, but I think we're kind of going in the right direction there. I don't know that we need to formalize anything, right?
I hope so.
Well, actually, do we need to take that rules for public comment and decimate it?
Well, I was thinking
Yeah.
about doing that on the next meeting,
Okay,
Yeah,
just basically changing around,
yeah.
so that it's much more
not
free.
telling
Well, similar
everybody to
to what's
behave
happening here.
themselves.
Because the public comment should be actually after the discussion by the commission, because you want to hear what we have to say, and then you can comment on that, whether you like it, don't like it, or whatever.
Or you can all the public comment at the end of the meeting, there wouldn't be anybody here. A lot of meetings do that.
But at the beginning of the meeting,
Are you
we
kidding
have
me?
Terry.
Right now?
No, they put it at the end of the meeting,
No.
so that
I'd rather have
it really
the-
shuts the people out.
On non-agenda items, some cities have moved to putting public comment on non-agenda items to the very end of the meeting.
Yeah.
So that the focus is on the governing board getting to its business, addressing the business items, getting rid of the business items, and then hearing what public has to say about non-agenda items.
I can understand that, but if you're a member of the public, I mean, unfortunately, right now, we have just some members of the public that are kind of annoying and saying things they shouldn't be saying when they come up here, even though it's free speech, it kind of do a lot of degrading. But say I'm a person who lives in town, and I only have a certain amount of time, and when I come to the public meeting, I just want to say, hey, I think this town's great. Maybe I'm, thinking a different way, but my public comment is I all I have to say is this is what my comment's got to be, and I'm not staying for the rest of the meeting. So I think there's a give and take to that. If you put them to the end, you're making them sit through the whole town meeting because I want to say, hey, I want to say thank you for the police department for saving my cat. They're not going to come in there if it's all the way at the end of the meeting.
That's what they do.
I mean, and they do. And they come in there and they say this. I mean, you sit here long enough, you see that people say a lot of things at the beginning of the meeting and then they leave.
Right, and you're forcing them to
Stay.
listen to you as a
Right.
commissioner till the end of the meeting.
And
Maybe they don't want to.
One thought is we do still allow write-in comments. So if someone has a kudo to provide to the town and doesn't want to sit through the whole meeting, they could provide it through the town clerk so that it will be read at the end of the meeting for sure. But it's certainly up to your discretion how you want to handle public comment on non-agenda items. What I will say from a legal perspective is if you have rules on public comment and regarding decorum, professional conduct, and those types of things, those need to be enforced because from a legal standpoint, those rules can be upheld if you enforce them. So whatever you decide to do when you have public comment on non-agenda items, just making sure that whatever rules you do have, that they're fairly enforced.
So if we change the verbiage on public comment, the rules of public comment, do we just change the verbiage or do we hand it to you to review and we gotta do a resolution or what?
We have to do a resolution because your rules are set by resolution. So it would be by an amending resolution if you were to change anything. That's all that's really
And
required from a legal standpoint.
Resolution, first reading?
Only one reading per resolution.
Very good.
I had one more thing.
Sure.
I would just like us to seriously think about going to zero-based budgeting. It was confusing to me getting familiar with the budgeting process in Ocean Ridge that we use reserves to balance the budget, and that's not balancing the budget. That's basically making your revenues equal the expenses that you want to have by taking money from reserves. So I would like to see us go back or go to a process of your revenues equal your expenses. And if the expenses exceed your revenues, then you need to work on those expenses. Thoughts?
You know why it was done like that? The police department has an inflated budget. So every year, whatever was pulled from reserves would be coming from the 2 officer openings in the police force, so the reserve would not be used. So, that was in-house, you guys were doing that. They were watching out for the commission.
Okay, but what's happened in the past, it becomes this kind of toggle. All right, so we're going to consider reducing the millage rate. We're making up the difference with the reserves. And then if you increase the millage rate, the reserve amount goes down. It's no budgeting whatsoever. It's just playing with numbers.
Correct. It is playing with numbers, yes. And by the end of the budget process, you'll want to play with the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, by the time, well, I mean, I think it's only 1 year.
No, it happens every year.
No, I'm saying in 1 year, we actually had to take the money from the budget. Because every year we have a surplus and the money goes back into the budget.
But that's bad budgeting.
We don't spend.
But the thing is, you don't spend as much as you
I'm not
budget.
saying you're doing bad budgeting, I'm just saying it's not efficient budgeting.
Yeah, it's hard to lock
We have a
down
new town manager,
exact
she's
money.
gonna
Very
figure it
hard.
out.
Well, actually, I would suggest rather than zero-based, that you do priority-based budgeting.
All right, now we're getting really,
Back to goals.
well, I guess that'd be a conversation we should have at one point.
Yeah.
I don't mind that, but we do have budget season coming up now, so it may be not until the following year. How you doing on that, by the way? Everybody starting to get their
We're starting to.
numbers
yes.
in?
Yeah. We're starting to have those conversations.
Okay.
I'd also like to see us down the road, rather than doing single year, but doing 2-year budgets.
Whoa.
I know it's a crazy idea.
Jeez.
It's a crazy idea, but most jurisdictions I've worked with do a 2-year budget, with the second year being a, very loose numbers, but giving you an idea so that you know 2 years out what you're already planning to spend, especially on capital expenditures.
Go for it.
Yeah, why not? So I guess my last question is, when do you think you'll have a decision on the chief position?
You just approved my contract today, so.
Well, I mean, why don't you move everything along, so.
Probably in May, I will be moving forward and hopefully have an answer for you at the June meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
One thing I'd like to mention is you do have a deadline of April 1 of 2024 for your comprehensive plan update. So we may need to include sooner rather than later an expenditure to hire a consultant to handle that.
Didn't we combine that with the overlay problem? We're trying to give.
We talked about it initially, but usually when you do your 7-year update, your comprehensive plan, it is a process, because ideally your comprehensive plan is part of your strategic plan, and they work together in terms of where you see the town going. So obviously you have your future land use element, your conservation element, transportation, utilities. So it's a lot of different elements that really is part of your strategic plan as a town. So getting into it and understanding your comprehensive plan is really a good idea, and usually you use a consultant to help facilitate that. There's obviously reports that need to be done behind it to support any changes to your comprehensive plan.
Doesn't your law firm work with these people?
We do, we have,
You have three that you
yeah,
recommend?
and there's several
I thought we left it
ones
at
out
that.
there.
No, do you remember this?
It was a brief discussion, we
Right.
decided to separate the overlay out of it because it
Right, because
more
we
of
wanted
a
more of a,
shortened process for
Correct.
that.
but I thought maybe I got another item that you were gonna recommend. one.
Yeah, and I can work with
Okay.
the manager on that, but that's another thing that's on the horizon.
Definitely. Makes sense, especially with all this new infrastructure demands.
All right. Is that it?
That's good.
Well, I hope everybody had a very good meeting, and thank you for coming.
Yep.
See you May 1st. Really?
Okay.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of nice